couple of weeks ago, early in the Ferguson protest that followed the police shooting death of 18-year-old Michael Brown, as police in riot gear were ordering demonstrators off the streets, they encountered a group of people who were gathered not on the street, but in a private backyard to observe and protest the police action that night. The St. Louis Riverfront Times captured what happened next.
You go home!
You go home! You go home! You go home! You go home! Hands up!
Come on, close.
Hands up, y'all! Hands up! Hands up! Hands up!
You want it? I'll take this picture. This is my truck! All right.
What you just saw is the police in Ferguson, Missouri, firing tear gas at a small group of unarmed protesters standing in a private backyard after one of them says, "This is my property." Can you imagine a scene more designed to inspire conservative outrage than this? You have people on their own property, in their own yard, engaged in their constitutionally protected right to peaceably assemble, and they are met with big government in the form of riot gear and a tear gas canister in their faces. People invoke the founders a bit frivolously for my taste, but this sort of thing pretty clearly seems like exactly the kind of thing the founders would have hated. And indeed, there was this moment 2 weeks ago after the tear gas and rubber bullets and the images of snipers on top of SWAT vehicles came out of Ferguson, Missouri, when it really did seem like some strange, very important left-right political coalition was falling into place. Ted Cruz came out with a statement expressing his concern over what he was seeing after the apparently illegal arrests of reporters Ryan Riley and Wesley Lowery, saying in part, quote, "Reporters should never be detained. Free press is too important simply for doing their jobs." Rand Paul took to Time magazine, writing, quote, "There is a legitimate role for the police to keep the peace. There should be a difference between a police response and a military response. The images and scenes we continue to see in Ferguson resemble war more than traditional police action." Even Glenn Beck, someone I really rarely agree with about anything ever, wrote last week, quote, "The local police are supposed to protect and serve, not shock and awe residents and transform their towns into a Middle East-like war zone at the flip of a switch. Imagine for a moment how history would be different if the Birmingham police were militarized like many towns are today." Now, as surprising as it was, it did make a whole lot of ideological sense. I mean, keep in mind, Obama-era conservatism is the same political movement that rails against the petty indignities brought about by recalcitrant clerks at DMVs and Obamacare navigators trolling health centers with clipboards. It's a political movement that staged a massive freakout over the admittedly invasive TSA body scans. A political movement that has adopted as its unofficial flag the yellow and black Gadsden flag with a hissing snake snapping back at being stomped on. A defiant message, "Don't tread on me." There is no set of people who should be better equipped with the ideological priors to recognize the specific kind of indignity and infringement of liberty presented by overzealous, uncaring, and unaccountable police officers. But I fear that all that might soon seem like a distant memory, as recent polling shows opinion on Ferguson and policing in general dividing along depressingly predictable lines. The biggest dividing line is race. There's also a political division. When asked to rate how well local police do at using the proper amount of force for any given situation, fully half of Republicans think police do a good or excellent job, compared to 24% of Democrats who feel the same. Part of this has to do with the great polarization machine of which I am, at times, admittedly, a part. The ricochet reasoning that says foolishly, well, if Al Sharpton is for it, then I'm against it. But here's the core truth that comes out of Ferguson, and it holds true in tens of thousands of cities and towns across this nation. When the police stop and frisk you because you fit a profile, when they make snide, abusive, or condescending comments, or order you around, that is what treading looks like. That is what petty tyranny feels like for millions and millions of our fellow citizens. And so after Ferguson, conservatives really have a choice: to be true to their principles and join liberals in a coalition to rethink and remake the way criminal justice works in this country, to attack the cancerous growth of the criminal justice and prison system, or to stick with articulating the politics of white racial grievance and resentment and fall in line behind police authority and mass incarceration. But you cannot have both. So choose. I hope you'll join us.